on Soul Sparks with your host Saima. We are joined by a woman. Learn that sometimes the way forward is actually the way back. Jessica Deere is a real estate maven, a devoted stepmom, and a soulful entrepreneur who is no stranger to reinvention. After years of striving, building, and becoming, she discovered that the real magic lives in the basics: home, grit, presence, and purpose. So, this conversation is about tuning in the noise and listening inward towards your soul been whispering all along. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'd love to share whatever I can with the viewers and listeners, and hopefully it can spark some inspiration.
Yeah, sure. It's my pleasure to have you here, Jessica. So, Jessica, like talk about going back to the basics to reconnect with the soul's desires. So, I'm really curious to know that what does that phrase mean to you right now?
I think after overcoming adversity, it brings you back to a point of where you can say, where can I start rebuilding from? And I think it's always going back to the basics and finding out what you truly desire and value. I think going back to your core beliefs is always something that is very well, how do I say this? Very well misunderstood. Sometimes we kind of leave those behind, and then when we face adversity, we then try to go back to them. And and for me, right now, that is going back to the basics.
Mm-hmm. So, was there a moment when the complexity of life drowned out your inner clarity?
Yes. So having been in a relationship where I had to be a stepmother, be a partner, run a business, cater to everyone's needs, as long as my own needs as well too. It really so the inner clarity really it really starts to dissipate when you start seeing that the world around you needs your full undivided attention. And when you give parts of yourself to everyone and everything around you, you start to lose that inner voice and that inner intuition. So that's kind of where, that pivotal moment for me is once you start realizing you're filling everyone else's cup versus your own, things start to not really spark, as they say.
Mm-hmm. It's really remarkable, Jessica, that how like life's complexities, whether they come as pressures or doubts, or simply the noise of existence, so easily cloud that the sense of clarity we try to hold on.
Yes, exactly. And you know what? When you're always busy trying to, again, manage a business, manage your partner, manage many multiple things and facets of life, that clarity isn't so clear. And I feel like the body also gives you signs. So you get foggy brained, you get tired, you have lack of focus and motivation. Sometimes, getting out of bed is a little bit harder than most times. So
Mm-hmm.
I think clarity is really important for us to really strive towards.
And like surely your reflection is a beautiful reminder, Jessica, that clarity isn't always have to be constant. It's something we lose and find again often through like the challenges we least expect, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think that as now that I'm no longer a stepmom, unfortunately, but I speak, I have friends and family members, clients that are mothers, parents. Everyone always comes back and asks, like, I'm in and out of clarity. Like, I don't know what to do next, or where's my purpose? Where's my identity? Because they lose themselves as being a parent or as being a partner and whatnot. And they always say, like, I admire you because now you're alone. And I say, well, no, I still have points in my life where I don't have any clarity because even after
Mm-hmm.
losing something, you don't know where your next fork in the road will be. So I think clarity will always come and go. I just think we need to put in some of our own boundaries and our own guidelines and let the people around us respect those as well.
Absolutely, that completely makes sense, Jessica. Now, as someone, juggling business and motherhood, what basics do you return to when you feel stretched or disconnected?
I always go back to nature. I really believe that grounding yourself in nature really brings you back to, source, whatever that is for you and in your faith. I recently read something, meditation obviously is a big component to that as well, but knowing to just, count five things you can see, four things you can touch, three things you can smell. I think it's
Hmm.
coming back to the senses as well. So you do feel, grounded, present, and human way. So I think I always go back to just going out in nature, going for a walk really clears my mind, and journaling is something that I really advocate for.
I really love that, Jessica, and I too feel that there's something so grounding about returning to nature, especially like in the midst of the constant motion that comes with balancing business and money, right?
Exactly. And I think that in an era where we are constantly glued to our phones, whether we're tapped into always looking for an email, a message, or something that comes up from social media, we forget that we are actually not meant to live like that. We are meant to actually
Mm-hmm.
be almost in our primal state. And going outside in nature when you can, as often as you can, is really what it's about.
Yes, exactly. Now, like you have had a powerful journey of self discovery. So I'm really curious to know that how did your upbringing shape your desire to help other women find their voice?
I think that growing up, I grew up with no confidence at all. I was never really bullied as a child, but I just always felt that my voice could never be heard. Growing up in an Italian household, you just do as do your homework, stay the good path and do your own thing. And it can get chaotic at some times. And I just really didn't have a voice. Wasn't really comfortable in my own skin. I wasn't always, the popular one. But I felt growing up that I really needed to find my own voice where it truly mattered and make a difference. And it really stemmed from I developed an eating disorder when I was younger, and that led me to want to help other women that didn't feel comfortable in their own skin to really, understand that they don't have to go down that route per se and try to find a healthier version in loving themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's really deeply moving, Jessica, to hear like how those early experiences, even the uh, painful and chaotic ones like being bullied, have shaped the strength and compassion you now bring to your work. And it's incredible actually that how the very moments that once made us feel you know smaller or silence can become the fuel for helping others find their own voice.
Yes. The thing growing up is, well, the last generation, I'm a millennial. So in that era there, I feel like a lot of it was just, as much as the amplified, giving a voice, I feel like having out your own voice is more so now, today's generation, where you want to voice as much as you can and help as much as you can. But back then, I feel like we were almost limited in how we wanted to voice ourselves, especially as women. And now we're up and coming and we're becoming very powerful beings. So I think I try to always find the best avenues and how my voice can be heard and how I can help service and help others the best way I can with the experiences that I've had from my past. I grew up with a single mom. Uh, just understanding my reality as a child also shapes me into who I am today. And I'm very much an advocate of helping those that were in similar positions.
That's the real work, Jessica. Being visible and vulnerable, especially when the world expects polished highlight reels.
Exactly. Everyone expects a lot from one another these days. And I just
Hmm.
feel like if we all just took a pause and a beat and really realize what it is that we can do and how we can serve the person next to us, that it'd be a much better place.
Absolutely, yes. So, can you share like one lesson you have learned recently about honoring your desires rather than dismissing them?
Um, I think I've learned to set up the proper boundaries for myself. That's, I think, of an important lesson, not just for me, but for anyone who's listening. And it's okay to have boundaries and set them and also voice them. I think that's a powerful lesson. I think we always just brush things off, or when people think, oh, well, she's easygoing. It's okay. No, it's not okay. We too
Mhm.
have boundaries. So I think that's the lesson I had to learn, as well as learning what wasn't okay for me and putting up those boundaries and making sure that this doesn't happen again for my future self.
That's really a meaningful insight, Jessica. Like setting boundaries is such an essential part of honoring our desires. Yet it's like something so many of us struggle with, especially when we have been conditioned to like prioritize the needs of and expectations of others over our own. And the fact that like you have recently embraced this lesson shows real growth and self-awareness for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I,
So, yeah, sure. Continue.
I wanted to also just bring a point as to, we go through we go through many lessons every day. And I think, as I mentioned, boundaries is one of them, but also on returning back to the basics means also going back to your intuition. I think we lose the sense of our intuition, again, as I mentioned, like through our phones, our everyday hustle and bustle, through work, through being a parent, through anything really. And I think that going back to figure out, I read a book recently that said, like, we are just, 8-year-old children running in adult bodies. I found that we need to go back to our intuition, and our intuition stems from like our, being a child as well. Like, we know right from wrong, we know, certain aspects about being a child, right? And I've also been exploring, like, what does 8-year-old Jessica want, right? So is it coloring? Is it, arts and crafts? Is it going out for a hike? Is it something that I used to do when I was a kid? So I think that that also in itself is a good thing to note, is returning back to basic is also going back to who you were as a child.
Mm-hmm. That's really remarkable, Jessica. Now, for the listener who feels like they have lost themselves in the chaos of doing, what's one basic you would like to share they can return to today?
Sorry, you got cut off. I didn't hear the last part.
Mm-hmm. Like for the listener who feels like they have lost themselves in the chaos of doing, what's one basic they can return to?
I think everyone has access to a book. I think everyone has access to a friend they can confide in. I think sometimes picking up a book that is in relation to what they're currently struggling with can always be the hot tip for me. I think a book has always helped me to, look at some words and take some perspectives differently. Also, a journal is just a paper and pen, just write it all out and write down your
Mm-hmm.
feelings. And I think that's just the basic thing. And then also, like, a friend or confidant you can confide in to really release what you need to say, and just no judgment on that person's part. Someone that you really can trust, that they can, even if they don't understand you, they're just there to listen.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that suggestion. Honestly, Jessica, there's something so grounding about picking up a book, especially in a world that constantly pulls our attention in every direction.
Exactly. I think also there's so many things online. If you have access to just having your phone with you or your computer with you, just, there's so much resources out there online that can give you just snippets of books and just enlighten you in many, many ways. So I think, a book is always something that I go back to, and I just, whether or not it's something that is motivational or even if it's fictional, sometimes we just to get out of our mind and read something else that's maybe will disconnect us a little bit, and it allows us to be away from our screens. So hopefully it won't be the computer or your tablet, but it could be an actual physical book. The smell of a book actually just creates an endorphin of its own.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's like beautiful, like small steps with big impact.
Yes, I agree with you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, there's so many things you can do with with a good book. You can find a spot in your home or a nearby cafe and just make it a ritual for yourself, going in the bath with the book. So I think there's so many things that it could encompass and allow you to do really that changes your everyday routine.
Absolutely, Jessica. Could not agree more. Jessica, you reminded us that returning to the basics isn't about going backward, it's about coming home to who we really are. So, listeners, when we stripe away the expectations, the noise, and the pressure, we are left with the truth, clarity, and an open path. If today's episode sparked a little remembering in you, share it with someone else seeking their soul's voice, and remember the most profound transformation often starts with a simple shift. And keep listening inward, keeping following that spark.